Okay. So this chapter is chapter 12, and um, I think without giving any big introduction, we'll say that the majority of the commentaries on Tehillim say that the purpose of this chapter of Tehillim is to teach us about the power of the word, spoken word. So that's the general idea. I think, like for myself, it's also a chapter that tells us that even when we're seeing people seemingly more powerful than us, seemingly taking advantage of us, we need to remind ourselves that Hashem will look after us, and keep on reminding us about um, our trust, our belief, our absolute belief in a better world in Mashiach. So it begins, Lamnatzeach al Hashminis Mizmor David. Lamnatzeach is to the conductor, al Hashminis, on an instrument called the Shminis, Mizmor David, a song by David. So the Shminit, in simple, the Shminit was an 8-stringed musical instrument that was used in the Beis Hamikdash and made beautiful music. Whenever whenever David chose a particular instrument when he gave instructions to use one or the other instruments, there was a deeper reason. And so, what is the reason that he chose the shminit, the 8-stringed um, instrument for this psalm? So the Medrash immediately comments over here and says the harp in the Beit Hamikdash had the harp in the Beit Hamikdash had 7 strings, and the one that there'll be when Mashiach comes will have 8 strings. Okay? And doesn't elaborate, doesn't discuss it over here in other places. It does. So so trying to understand why David chose this particular 8-stringed instrument for this capital of Tehillim. So first, simple, more surface reason for it. David is speaking about, or he's prophesying about the terrible things that Atalia did. If you know the stories from Tanakh, she tried to wipe out all of Beit David, all of the house of David. She was pretty successful, and she left behind only one little baby, Joash, by mistake. And from there, David's house regenerated, and we still have Beit David, we still have the descendants of David. And this happened in the 8th generation from David. And so David, in starting this capital of Tehillim, David says, Lamnatzeach al Hashminis, we are going to be menatzeach, we are going to be victorious over the Shminit, over that which happened in the 8th generation. And so we'll see as we go through this chapter of Tehillim that David mentions over here not only Atalia, but all generations of people who try to wipe out David and the house of David. And he also says that in every generation that's going to happen. And he concludes this capital of Tehillim with absolute confidence that Hashem is going to look after us. He's going to look after him. He's going to look after us. We know specifically that 8 represents something above natural. So the world is created in 7 days. That's the ordinary working world with everything that's in it, where people can behave as they want. They can be good, they can be bad. Life is going to go as humans behave. Natural things, normal natural things are going to happen. And the 8th is supernatural. It's when the 7 no longer is the force that rules the world, but 8, when Hashem rules the world, when Hashem does what he needs to do to show his love to the Yidden and to us. It's interesting, the Vilna Gaon says that this chapter of Tehillim has to be read on Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of Sukkot, and he says that Shmini Atzeres is the day that that Hashem shows the Yidden that for a whole week we've been bringing sacrifices, the Sukkot sacrifices in the Beis Hamikdash for everybody else, for the whole world. And Shmini Atzeres is the day where Hashem says, "It's me and you. I care about you, Yidden, more than I care about anyone else." This year, I imagine that there are a lot of us who struggle with this concept that we've been repeating for years and years, that Shmini Atzeres is a special day for Yidden. But please God, we're going to see that. We're going to see how that turns out. Like David HaMelech says over here, that this is what 8 represents. But here, David calls out to Hashem and he explains what bothers him about what's going on in the world. And he says, Hoshia Hashem, save us or help us, Hashem, ki gomor chassid, because the pious have gone, ki fasu emunim mibnei Adam, and the faithful have disappeared from humankind. So Metzudas David immediately says, who is this chassid that David HaMelech is talking about when he says, Ki gomor chassid, the chassid is gone. And he says that David is crying about the fact that he feels that there is no human being who he can rely on anymore. It was, according to the Metzudas, immediately after the time that David was called by the Plishtim to help them with the fight against their enemies. And he helped them, and they trapped him, and they they sent some of their men to Shaul, who was the king then, to say, we have David trapped over here. And only by miracle, David escaped. But David says at this point, he says, there's no one I can trust. Ki gomor chassid, there's no person who I could think would help me. I know that even the people who I believe in are betraying me. And so he says, Hashem, it's only you, Hashem, who can help me. Reb Shamshon Hirsch asks, what's the difference between chassid, because he says ki gomor chassid, and emunim, people who believe, who are faithful, who David says over here have disappeared also. And so he says there are a lot of faithful people in the world. You look around the world, even today, you'll see there are plenty of good people in the world. They are called emunim. They are people who are good to other people. They are people who keep Torah and mitzvahs. They are just decent, good people. Those are called emunim. But what Reb Shamshon Hirsch explains is that it's not enough. It's not enough to just be around good people. There has to be a chassid. What is the chassid? So chassid translates as pious. Remember that in the Torah, when it says chassid, it doesn't mean the chassidim of nowadays, or so it could, but that's not what it's referring to. A chassid refers to a person who other people look up to, because that person cares about the people in the world, cares about the world around. And so David HaMelech says, Hoshia Hashem, you the one who has to help us now. Ki gomor chassid. There's no one in the world who I can rely on. There's no one in the world who anyone can rely on. There's no one in the world who seems to care about the world, about the people in the world, about the life in the world. And he explains, he says, what's going to happen as a result of that? Kifasu emunim mibnei Adam. Then the emunim, those people who are just good, decent people, are also going to disappear if they don't have anybody pulling them up, raising them. It says that the Emperor Hadrian asked by Hashem, in what merit are the Jewish people going to endure? And he was told it's because they are holy people, they are good people who spend their time doing good things. And it's because of that, it's because of those people that Jews will endure. They'll always be Yidden. And so immediately immediately Hadrian put a huge tax on the Jews so that they would have to work harder to earn enough money to pay this tax. And what happened is that less and less people were able to give their time to study Torah, to communal work, and whatever. And so here David is decrying that, and he's saying, Hashem, help us. We want to be good. We want to do good things, but it's becoming physically impossible to be able to do that. And Reb Nachman of Breslov says, he says, we have to have faith. And in the absence of chesed, in other words, in the absence of people who work with the community and give us faith, it's very difficult for us to have faith. And he says, and this is what David was telling us, and he's telling it to us through all the generations. Hashem, you have to help us. Ki gamar chesed, that there is no one who is inspiring us, motivating us, and making sure that we have faith, we have what we need. And David explains himself. He says, "Shav yedabru ish esra'ehu." People tell lies to each other. Svas chalakos belev alev yedaberu, and they speak with a divided tongue. I think in English we say a forked tongue, and deceit in their hearts. So immediately the different commentaries speak about the different words that people use, which cause this badness, this emptiness in the world. So the Malbim says here, where David says shav yedabrish, they speak lies. Okay, this is untruths, and the Malbim goes so far as to say that sometimes they appear to be speaking truth, and they take even theological ideas, even things that we need, like that we should be thinking about, Torah concepts, and they falsify it. They put in things that appeal to them, that's not necessarily true, and they add all these things. Then Reb Shamshon Fal Hirsch says, what kind of talk is this? He says, this is manipulative talk, this is smooth talk, this is polished talk. So he says, like, as soon as you find somebody who is speaking in that way, says David HaMelech, be wary, okay? Worry about it. Amlai says, what is this? Shav Yedabru, he says that this is when people say one thing and mean something else. If you go and have a look at the story of Yosef being sold by his brothers, so right before that, the Torah tells us about the brothers fighting and the brothers being really angry at Yosef. And then the Torah says that they were not able to speak in peace with Yosef. And Rashi over there comments and he says, in their disgrace, we also have their praise. And to understand what Rashi is saying over there, he explains himself. He says, in the disgrace that the brothers were fighting, the way they were fighting, the fact that they couldn't speak with each other was actually part of their praise. They were not echad bepeh ve'echad belev, saying one thing with their mouths and meaning something completely different in their hearts. And most of the commentaries go with this concept of shav yedabru, that they speak lies, that's what it is, where people appear to like you but do things behind your back, where people say things to you and don't really mean exactly what they're saying. So next pasuk is actually a pleading, a prayer from David, and he says, Yachres Hashem kol sifsei chalakos. May Hashem destroy all these lips of division. Lashon medaberes gedolos, tongues that speak with arrogance. So interesting here that in this one short pasuk, it mentions two different ways that the Torah refers to speech. It speaks about sifsei chalakos, or lips, and it speaks about lashon, which is tongue. So simply, how we can go in this pasuk, generally when it speaks about us not speaking nicely, and it uses the word lips, It's referring to all things to do with man and his fellow man. When it speaks about a human being saying things they shouldn't to another human being, to their friends, to their family, whatever, the Torah generally uses lips. And when it speaks about speaking to Hashem, internal speech, things that are going on inside of us, then the Torah generally uses the word lashon, tongue. And we're going to see that more clearly in the next pasuk. So have a look at the next pasuk. Hey, it says, "Asher amru lil shoneni." Those who say, "Lil shonenu nagbir," with our tongues we will make ourselves great. Sfasenu itanu mi adon lanu. When our lips are with us, who can control us? Who can stop us? So let's understand this concept first of the tongue. Lil shonenu nagbir, with our tongues we will succeed, we will get great. So Reb Chaim Vital, who is probably the most famous student of the Arizal, and he writes, a man has many organs. They're all shapes and they're all different parts and different places in his body. But the tongue is laid flat, it's imprisoned in the mouth, it has cheeks on either side, it's held in by the teeth and the lips, and yet man has no difficulty saying what, letting it free, letting it go out. So he says, and not only that, instead of holding in the tongue where it's meant to be held in, the tongue easily gets out. And instead of regretting it, what does man say? He says, Lil shonenu nagbir. With our tongues, we will succeed. We will get better. We'll be better than everybody else. A cute story that's told in the Gemara. It says that Rav Gamliel called his servant, a man called Tavi, and he sent him to the market. He gave him money, and he sent him to the market, and he said, "I want you to walk around the marketplace, and I want you to buy the biggest delicacy, the nicest thing there that you could find." And the servant came home with a tongue, and Rabbi Gamliel said, "Why did you bring tongue?" And he said, "It's the biggest delicacy that there is." And then Rabbi Gamliel said to him, "Now here's money. I want you to go back to the marketplace and buy the most horrible food you could come across." And Tavi came back with a tongue. So why did you bring a tongue this time? So he said, for those who love it, tongue is the biggest delicacy, and for those who hate it, it's the worst thing. Okay, people can't stand to have it even on their tables. So this story always plays out in our house. My husband and some of my children love tongue, and I can't bear it. I can't stand it because I do cook it every now and again. Especially I have one son-in-law who loves tongue, so whenever he's here, I make tongue. But the story resonates with me. For those who love it, tongue is the biggest delicacy. For those who don't, it's the worst. It's the absolute worst. And Rabbi Gamliel turned to his student and he said, "You've done right. This is what the tongue is, not in a food way, but in a more spiritual way. When it's used properly, the tongue can do the most amazing things. It can study Torah, it can daven, it can say kind words, it can achieve the greatest things. And then when it's used in the wrong way, the tongue can make the most destruction of the worst and absolute terrible destruction." And over here in Tehillim, what is the tongue saying? Mi adon lanu, who could control us, who could be boss over us. And Rashi comments over here that this is talking about lashon hara. When people use their tongues for lashon hara, who is master over the tongues? And Rashi makes such a strong comment, and I keep asking myself, how is it that I read these things, I learn these things, and then I let my tongue out from between the teeth and lips? But it says over here that a person who speaks lashon hara doesn't believe in God. Is a heretic. Like, he doesn't believe in God. How could that be? How could it be that we do believe in God? So how can Rashi say that a person who speaks lashon hara doesn't believe in God? And if you go and have a look at the commentaries on Rashi, quotes the Talmud, and the Talmud says, Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Yosef, if a person speaks lashon hara, it's as though he has denied the foundations of faith. And the Zohar says a person can be forgiven for every sin that he does, except for the sin of lashon hara. And the Chavetz Chaim explains that all other sins are motivated by us wanting some kind of pleasure. We like the way that looks. We like the way that feels. And so we sin because we've been tempted into it. But with lashon hara, a lot of the time, people just say it. Not for any personal gain, not for any need, not for any pleasure, just because we let our tongue out from between our teeth and our lips, and it's just not significant to us that Hashem said, "Don't speak lashon hara." This concept of mi adain lanu, who can rule over us, who can be in control of us. So I think 2 points that come to mind. The first one is that the Beis Din cannot punish you for something you said before you did it. So if I say I'm going to kill you and I get taken to court for threatening you, I can't get punished for murder. If I say I'm going to steal everything you have and I didn't do it, I can't get punished for stealing, right? So this is what the tongue means. Mi adain lanu, who can rule over us? We can say precisely what we want. And a second point about this, which I think is also fascinating to me, is that if you go and have a look at Al Chet, the Asham and then the Al Chet, almost all of them, very high percentage of them, have to do with what the tongue's done, how the tongue spoke to this one, and and whether it's lashon hara or it's rechilut, or if it's talking badly to teachers or talking badly to parents or friends or whatever it is. The majority of sins that a human being does have to do with that flat piece of meat that is lying behind our teeth and our lips. And so David HaMelech continues and he says, Mishoid aniyim me'en kasef yonim, because the downtrodden have been robbed, so to speak, and the needy have cried out. Comes along Hashem, Ata akum yemar Hashem. I'll get up now, says Hashem. Ashes b'yesha yafiach loi, and I will deliver them. I will save them from those who are harming them. So we know the rule that when people are doing things against Hashem, Hashem remains patient and he waits for us to do teshuvah. But when people are harming, hurting, bothering each other, when the sins are bein Adam l'chaveira, between man and his fellow man, then Hashem is not patient. And it's interesting because in Tehillim, there's 5 different times where David HaMelech calls on Hashem to get up and save us, right? Kuma Hashem, v'yafutzu oivecha, disperse your enemies. Over 5 different times in Tehillim, David HaMelech calls on Hashem and says, Kuma, get up. And we don't see immediate response to that. Hopefully we see response, but we don't see immediate response to that. But here, sorry. Sorry. When do we see response? Hashem says, I will get up. Akuma, I will get up. And when will that be? When I see people who are suffering as a result of other people. Hashem says, for that, when people are downtrodden, that's when I will get up and I will save them. How do we bring this about? How do we cause this to happen? Pasuk Vav. Imres Hashem Amaros Tahiris. Hashem's words are pure truth. Kesef tzaruf ba'alil la'aretz. They are like refined silver that's been refined over and over in the ground. Mezukok shirasayim, over and over again. So Imres Hashem Tahiris, Amaras Tahiris, that these words of Hashem are words of purity. Says Rashi, the only person who promises and delivers on what he promises is Hashem. And if we don't see it happening, it's still happening. And this is how we have to live. We have to believe. Imres Hashem, Amaras Tahiris. The words of Hashem are absolutely pure. What he promised us, he will do for us, and we have to live with that faith and that belief. How do we bring that about? Says Rashi. He says, goes back and reads the same sentence again. Imres Hashem Amaras Tahiris. The words of Hashem. In other words, the words of Torah study, the words of davening, the words of Hashem is actually our currency for Hashem's promises to happen. And Hashem's promises are the only ones which are good for everyone. Other people can make promises that's good for one person, not good for another person. We can think we're doing good, but it doesn't turn out good. Only Hashem does, and whatever he promises and he does, it's good. And if we want to copy that, if we want to make sure that the words that we use are also good, are also good for everyone, then they have to be Hashem's words, so to speak. And which words of Hashem do we have access to? That's only the words of Torah and the words of Tefillah. What does this mean? Kesef tzaruf. They are like refined silver. And so immediately the Medrash Sechet Tov says, it's like a king who has a silver plate, and he takes it to the silversmith, and he makes the silversmith refine it over and over and over again. He says, not good enough yet, not good enough yet. And then the Medrash Sechet Tov says that when Hashem gave us the Torah, so he didn't just hand it to us, he said to Moshe Rabbeinu, this is the Torah. And then for each fact in the Torah, he gave Moshe Rabbeinu 49 ways to prove that it's good, it's tahar, it's pure, and 49 ways to clarify that it's not tahar, it's not good. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, what should I do with this now? I have every fact here with 49 proofs for and against. Now what? And Hashem said to him, take it into the world and let the people debate it. And then he explained to Moshe how in Torah law we go with a majority decision. And this remains very confusing. So Moshe Rabbeinu understood it. We wonder about this medrash, because what does that mean? That human beings decide if Torah law is correct or incorrect by majority decision? Like, how does that work? And the Rebbe explains that a Talmud Chacham, someone who has studied the words of Hashem, his soul is not finding out something new for the first time. His soul, its very essence, it knows Hashem. And so when the Talmud Chacham makes that choice and he says, this is what this part of Torah means, this is the decision for this law, it's not something new that he just figured out now. His very essence, his neshama, recognizes exactly what Hashem wants, how. And the Medrash brings the mashal of a person who went to visit someone, and he saw their house, and he saw the furniture they like, and he saw everything that's important to them, and he saw how they positioned the things in their house. And then for whatever reason, the house is destroyed. And they decide that they're going to help put the house together again. So then they have in mind already where they're going to shop, what they're going to buy. When they bring the stuff into the house, they know where they're going to put it, because they're going to try and recreate that which they saw before, because that's what's going to make the person whose house it is happy. And so it is with Torah mitzvahs. When we do it, when we choose it, and we say the right things, we do the right things, what we actually are not doing something new. We're recreating what our neshama, what our soul saw previously. before, and we're just putting the things back in place to make Hashem happy, so to speak. The Medrash also tells us that in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the children of Yerushalayim were especially clever. We always like to say that still the air in Israel makes you clever. And I'm sure I told you this. I was very cynical about going to Israel some years ago. It was during the Intifada. Batsheva was in Sem there, and she was very desperate that we should come and visit. And I was very ambivalent about it. Should we go? Shouldn't we go? We landed at the airport, and Batsheva started phoning. Ma, don't you like Israel? Isn't Israel amazing? I said, Batsheva, we haven't got our suitcases yet. She said, but isn't Israel amazing? Isn't it incredible to be there? And I remember I answered her. I said, oh, Batsheva, I'm just breathing in, and I'm getting cleverer and cleverer just from the air. So I was being super cynical to her, but the truth of the matter is that the air of Eretz Yisrael makes people clever, and it speaks about the brilliance of particularly the air of Yerushalayim, and the children of Yerushalayim always known for their chachma, for their wisdom, and it says that the time of the Beis Hamikdash, any child in Yerushalayim could explain halacha and Torah in 49 different ways, each like even the most difficult parts of Torah. And so David HaMelech says, know that the words of Hashem are these pure and holy words. And he says, Ata Hashem tishmeram, you Hashem will guard, titzreinu min hadar zu la'olam, and you'll care forever from this generation. In other words, David HaMelech is saying, in every generation, there are going to be those people who are going to attempt to harm us, and maybe they will harm us. And yet he says, Min hadar zu la'olam, you Hashem will save us from this generation. Not last generation, not 10 generations ago, but this generation that we're living in right now. We have a promise that Hashem will look after us. And he explains, he ends off by saying, Saviv Rashaim Yishalachun, the wicked walk around in circles, Krum Zulais Livnei Adam, and that which that they belittled becomes great. So Saviv Rashaim, the wicked walk around, because what we find in the end is that although it looks like the wicked are so great and they're doing so many amazing things, and they've built so many tunnels and they have so many drones and they have whatever it is, Saviv Rashaim Yisalechem. They're going round and round and round in circles. We know the way. We have to go straight. Okay, we've got to go on the straight way and connect with Hashem directly. Says the Medrash that Saviv Rashaim, going around in circles, the wicked going around in circles, is like a drunk who is trying to get out of find the path. And what does he do? He leads his horse around and around the fountain. Can't find his way out of the traffic circle or whatever it is, because he doesn't know which way he has to go. The Talmud explains to us this funny sentence, Krum Zulais Livnei Adam, which we're translating literally as among people, that which is Zulais, that which is Zulais, which is nothing. Krum is exalted, is made higher. So in this generation that we're living in, humans look at the world and they take things that are really worthless and things that are really bad and then turn them krum into something that is exalted, that is really high. But really, krum is from the word ram, high, exalted. And the in Chassidus explains to us that krum is talking about davening. Davening, from the word ram, we know that the highest thing that a person can do is to connect to Hashem through davening. Okay, it's written Barumai Shel Olam. It's the highest thing of the world, and yet people see it as Zulais as nothing. You can murmur off your few davenings, you can stand in the back of the shul and talk, you can say the words without finding them, you can even not daven if you're not in the mood, right? These are all Kurum Zulais. We have Kurum, we have the highest way to connect with Hashem, and Zulais Bnei Adam, and human beings don't realize the power that we have, and we turn it into nothing. And so clearly, David HaMelech is giving us the power. He's saying a person can use their tongue and make it delicious, and that would be through the davening, through the Torah learning, the Imres Taharis, the high, holy, truthful words of Hashem. Or a person chooses to use their tongue, as he explained earlier on, that it can be used shav yadabru-ish, that we can use our tongues to speak lashon hara, to tell lies, to hurt other people, and it's completely our choice. But we have the promise that when we do it right, then we have the absolute promise that Hashem has made us, that He will take care of us generation after generation after generation. And that brings us to the end of Perek Yud Beis.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ricky.
Good
Thank
Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
you.
Have a good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbat.
Oh,
And I'm
Ricky,
glad you
thanks.
have your electricity back. Who was there, Sue? She's the one who told me she doesn't have.
Yeah.
Have a warm Shabbos,
have a warm Shabbos
A
too.
warm Shabbat. Yeah.
the illuminated one.
And right.
And illuminated. Yeah.